IB European history students, let's talk this morning about the chain reaction that leads to war, otherwise known as the July Days. So let's just go through the chain of events. So on June 28th, 1914, and you've read about it in a previous part of this curriculum. You've probably learned about it before, but on that day, the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophia were assassinated. They were assassinated by a Serbian nationalist named Gavrilo Princip, but there was also clearly a conspiracy to perform the assassination, and that conspiracy was performed by an organization called the Union of Death, otherwise known as the Black Hand. And the Black Hand, as you've read, was not just a Serbian organization. It was a Slavic organization that would have included Croats and other groups within it, because they viewed independence, an independent Slavic, pan-Slavic nation, as better than being governed over by a power like Austria-Hungary. So when the Archduke appeared on that day, and it was a bad decision in particular on that particular day, because there were celebrations of an event that took place in 1389 between the Ottomans and the Serbians, and the event took place in Sarajevo, which was in Bosnia. And in Bosnia, there was a large, and is a large population of Serbians. Regardless of all the specifics, Gavrilo Princip, after a failed attempt in an odd way, jumps up on the side of the car, pokes his head in with his revolver, and shoots both the Archduke and his wife at close range. So the next few weeks were important. One thing that's missing from this timeline is, in the meantime, between the ultimatum and the assassination, Germany issues what's famously or commonly known as the blank check telegram, where they essentially tell Austria-Hungary that they will support them no matter what they choose to do. So it empowers Austria-Hungary to issue this ultimatum on July 23rd. That ultimatum had three parts. One was simply to suppress all anti-Austrian propaganda. The second was to fire anybody involved in this conspiracy to assassinate. And the third, which was intended, at least arguably intended, not to be met. The third term was that Austria-Hungary demanded to occupy Serbia until the first two terms were met. That wasn't reasonable. That was issued on July 23rd. Austria-Hungary simply refuses to meet all those demands, but they appear to be reasonable because they argue that this issue should be submitted to a conference, an international conference, to avoid a major conflict. So in the way that that Serbia responds, Norman Rich, who you read, refers to it as a masterpiece of public relations, because at this point, it put Austria-Hungary in a difficult position, because the Serbian response was, by all accounts, reasonable. So when they declared war on July 28th to the rest of the world, it's Austria-Hungary that appears the aggressor and appears the bully. Now, at that point, Russia had a difficult decision. Russia, in 1908, in the Bosnian crisis, vowed that they would never again back down to Austro-Hungarian demands in the Balkans. So when war was declared by Austria-Hungary against Serbia, Russia mobilized its forces. There's no declaration of war, but they mobilized, meaning they prepared for it. They called up reserves, and they were ready to go to war. Because Germany had been very forceful in their support of Austria-Hungary, it's Germany, allied with Austria-Hungary, that declares war on Russia. There was some interesting letters exchanged prior to that between Kaiser Wilhelm II and Nicholas II, who obviously knew each other, because they were both grandsons of Queen Victoria of Great Britain. And despite their exchanges of letters and how much they loved each other and their mutual respect, Germany did still declare war on August 1st. France, who had been funding Russia's ability to mobilize and prepare for this war, also mobilized and entered the war, with Germany declaring war on them. And Germany, one could make an argument at least, was in a difficult position, knowing that they had enemies on both sides, both France and Russia, and they would have to be aggressive in dealing with that situation. Germany would then begin the war by executing what was known as the Schlieffen Plan, which we'll talk about in the next unit. But they invade neutral Belgium and Luxembourg in an attempt to surround Paris and knock the French out of the war quickly. And it was this violation of Belgium's neutrality that would bring Great Britain into the conflict, who, although they had been practicing for this moment for a number of years with France, when the time counted, there was still a question mark as to whether Great Britain would join, given that they were not part of continental Europe and in Ireland, they had some flexibility. But because Belgium was invaded and their neutrality was threatened, Great Britain enters the war on the side of the Allies. The one country of the major alliances who chose not to take part at this point would be Italy. Italy would break its alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary, and they would join on the Allied side a year later in 1915.